الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين أما بعد. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Qasas in chapter 28 in verse 57 بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقالوا إن نتبع الهدى معك نتخطف من أرضنا. That's the beginning of the verse. And they, meaning Quraysh, when the Prophet ﷺ invited them to Islam, they said, if we were to follow the guidance with you, we would be swept from our land. This verse is so rich in meanings and so applicable to every one of us in any time, in any place, in any age. Thinking that you could lose by obeying Allah or win by disobeying Him, that's the height of ignorance. That's what that verse is refuting. And the remaining of the verse and the verses that come after it in Surah Al-Qasas, Allah refutes this idea that somehow you're going to lose if you do the right thing. So anyone behaving or thinking in this matter, the end of the verse is وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And most of them do not know anything. They don't know. It's ignorance. You don't know who Allah is. You don't know the true nature of faith and what you're supposed to be doing. So the background of this verse, just a little history lesson. Quraysh was revered among the Arabs. They were the leaders of the Arabs because they were descendants from Sayyidina Ibrahim through Ismail, Sayyid alayhi salam. They were the protectors and servers of the Kaaba. So everybody in the Arab peninsula knew that they were God's favored people. You don't mess with them. Their trades to Yemen and to Syria were protected where everybody else was getting attacked. Mecca was safe. It was a safe. Nobody would even dare do anything or attack the city, so they were safe and they were profitable because everybody wants to come in. All of the tribes brought their idols and put them around the Kaaba, and they would come and do pilgrimage, and so they benefited monetarily, politically, in every way. They were benefiting to the max from their status. So when the Prophet ﷺ came up and invited them to Islam, in their limited mind, they thought, if we abandon all of these idols, we're going to, نُتَخَطَّفْ مِنْ أَرْضِنَا. And نُتَخَطَّفْ has two meanings. Either people will depart and we fear poverty, they will abandon us, and then our trades will, we're going to be bankrupt, or people are going to fight us and we're going to perish. So that's what they were fearing, that if they follow the guidance, they knew the Prophet ﷺ was telling the truth. He spent 40 years with them, and he was known as as-sadiq al-amin, the trustworthy and the truthful. They knew he was right, but it's like, we cannot compete with you on that. It was a competition. So human nature is keen to preserve these two aspects: life and provision. And many people commit sin and go into haram just to protect those two things, life and provision. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala guaranteed these two aspects. Your life is set by Allah. Nobody else will decrease your life a second or extend it by a second. That's set by Allah. And provision is set by Allah before we were even created. So you will not depart this life until you have received every provision that was written for you. So when Allah, confirms these two things are protected, then, why do you need to follow the unlawful for that? So Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, guaranteed these aspects. So that's why true believers, they're brave. When you go and look at the seerah of the Sahaba, they were fearless. They were lions because they knew nothing is going to happen to them except what Allah has decreed for them. And they were on Allah's path and they were protected by Him. So they were brave. They would go in. They had stances that you'd kind of scratch your head as what courage they had. Because they understood that fact that your life and your provision is guaranteed by Allah and nobody else will get it and nobody else can take it away from you. So the fear of poverty drive many to unlawful behavior and to maybe reject the law, reject the faith. Some doctors, we remember this 2 years ago during COVID. They knew certain medicines actually help the patients, but people were, in power were threatening them. If you prescribe this medicine to them, you're going to lose your license. And they backed down. They knew what the right thing to do is, but they backed down because they didn't want the trouble. Some fear the trouble, so they disobey Allah, and they think that that's gonna, the problem's gonna just move away from them. No, it won't. This is people's logic. وَقَالُوا إِن نَتَّبِعِ الْهُدَى مَعَكَ نُتَخَطَّفْ مِنْ أَرْضِنَا. Some fear to lose their business deal if they don't take the client and wine them and dine them, and serve alcohol. Some think that the restaurant will never be profitable unless you serve alcohol in it. Some fear for their job, that if they knew I was a Muslim, I fear for my job. I cannot pray during work because if they would know I'm a Muslim, there could be retribution. This verse manifests itself in so many ways in our life that you know what the right thing is, but some people will not do it because they may get in trouble. Trouble with who? Trouble with people? You get in trouble with Allah to save yourself trouble with people? What kind of a logic is this? So this is a faulty logic. And the Quran in the rest of the verse corrects that logic, and the other verses that follow it. There's like 5 different replies that Allah replies to that incorrect logic. Allah says in the rest of that verse, أَوَلَمْ نُمَكِّنْ لَهُمْ حَرَمًا آمِنًا يُجْبَى إِلَيْهِ ثَمَرَاتُ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ رِزْقًا مِنْ لَدُنَّا وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Have we not established for them, for Quraysh, a safe sanctuary to which we brought the fruit of all things as provision from us, their provision from Allah? But most of them do not know. What the verse is telling them, you are in a state of shirk. You were worshipping idols and Allah took care of you. If you now believe God is going to take that away from you, what kind of a God, is in your mind? Is that your idea of what God is? When you disobey Him, He makes you profitable. When you follow Him, He takes everything from you. What kind of a logic is that? So Allah is saying, weren't you in a state of shirk and I took care of you? Why would I not take care of you if you follow the faith? So that's one of the replies. That if you obey Allah, He will take care of you. He will not abandon you. Would there be difficulties? Yeah, maybe. But you will win in the end. And it is not logical that you would disobey Him and you be successful. You may be successful temporarily, but if you put the hereafter in that equation, if you disobey Him, no matter what you do in this earth, you are a loser. You will lose. So you have to look at it, the whole picture. And this is how ignorant people who don't know Allah think and act. Quraysh knew that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was truthful, but they wanted to protect their status. They were not willing to risk what they had. Their desire for self-interest blinded them to the truth, and they followed evil ways to protect that life. And we all know what happened to them. They were humiliated, defeated, and killed, and in hellfire. Is that what they tried to protect? And the next verse basically gives that reply as well. وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا مِنْ قَرْيَةٍ بَطِرَتْ مَعِيشَتَهَا فَتِلْكَ مَسَاكِنُهُمْ لَمْ تُسْكَنْ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا وَكُنَّا نَحْنُ الْوَارِثِينَ. And how many a city have we destroyed that was insolent in its way of living, and those are their dwellings which have not been inhabited after them except briefly, and it is we who were the inheritors. So if you want to protect your status, your wealth, your business, whatever it is of this life that you're trying to protect with the disobedience of Allah, then what? If you persist, then what? What's waiting at the end of the road? Death. Death is what's coming at the end of the road, and there'll be a hefty price to pay. So whatever they were trying to protect, power, it's temporary. Wealth, temporary. Dwellings, temporary. Everything in this life is temporary and not worth disobeying Allah to preserve. Even if you were able to preserve it in this life by disobedience, then what? Then what? Then death comes and they are the biggest losers. So everything that they strove for, they disobeyed Allah, they fought the Prophet, they killed and did all kinds of evil things. They did all that stuff to protect what was in fact temporary. So even if they enjoyed it in this life, they would have paid the price in the hereafter. So these verses apply to all of us in any day, in any age, because human behavior is always the same. Human behavior thinks that I don't want to get in trouble, so I'll go along to save myself the hassle. No. You do the right thing. You do what Allah told you to do, and you fear no one. That's what the Quran logic is trying to tell you. You do the right thing and you trust in Allah. Because if you trust in Allah, He will not let you down. And other verses will, inshallah, maybe next week we'll delve a little bit more to the other cases that Allah refutes so that the picture is complete. So thinking that we have to inspect our creed. What do we believe, down inside? If we think that success can be achieved with disobedience, we are wrong. And if you think you can lose with obedience to Allah, you're wrong. You are the winner no matter what happens when you obey Allah. Even if the whole world comes down on you, okay, and they come after you, they imprison you, they kill you, then what? You're in heaven forever. Who won? Who's the winner? There is no loss with obedience to Allah. Temporary inconvenience, yes, but loss, no. So, if you obey Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He will not abandon you. He will support you. He will protect you in ways that you could not even imagine. And it doesn't befit the majesty of the Lord that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, when you ignored Him and you went against Him for years and years, and He gave you health and wealth and family and all the stuff, at the second you decide, I'm gonna follow Him, I'm gonna do my best to worship Him, then He would abandon you. It doesn't befit the majesty of Allah. We have to have the right understanding of who it is that we worship. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is the creator and provider. The one who ordered you to do something, He owns everything, and nothing happens without His leave and without His knowledge and without His permission. When you understand that, you understand how the Sahaba were so brave and they did not care even if they cut them in pieces. They knew that Allah will take care of them. So the God who ordered us to act is the same one who disposes all affairs. So follow the faith, do the right thing, and don't worry about the consequences. Do the right thing, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will never let you down, and He will make you successful in this life and in the hereafter. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم.